Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me again today for the Finding Hope After Loss podcast. I hope you all had a gentle holiday season. I know I, for one, am really hoping that 2023 will be a much better year. There's no doubt the past few years have been hard with everything going on. I know some people don't typically set New Year's resolutions, but it's been part of my family tradition when we were growing up, and still now I try to set them each year. So I've been working on setting some of mine. I recently posted on Instagram some good lost mom resolutions. So the first one I wanted to talk about was be gentle with your grief. Grief is hard. It isn't linear and it isn't always pretty. Being kind with ourselves to deal with our grief, however we need to do it, is very important. Don't feel you have to do it a certain way. There's no right or wrong way to grieve. There's no set length of time to grieve. Just be kind to yourself. Also, be kind to yourself when trying to conceive after a loss. Trying to get pregnant again after a loss is hard enough as it is. You so desperately want to have that baby to hold in your arms, but then you feel this whole other wave of emotions. Fear that you'll go through loss again, guilt that you're, quote, moving on too quickly, anxiety that you won't be able to get pregnant again. Again, give yourself grace. It's hard. All of this is hard. Know that you are a mom, even if your baby isn't here physically. I know so many that don't feel like a mom or don't feel they can call themselves a mom because they don't have a baby physically here to hold and see. But that's so far from the truth. You become a mom the moment you get that positive test, the moment you start dreaming about your life with your baby. You'll always be a mom to your baby, and they will always be your baby. Don't let anyone else dictate that for you. Also, accept help when you need it. Too often we think we have to grieve alone. We don't want to bother other people, or sometimes we honestly just want to be alone and not have to deal with others. But it's okay to accept help from family members or friends that offer it. And it's okay to ask for the help we need. Help with chores, making meals, running errands. Don't be too proud to accept it, and don't be too afraid to ask for it. The last resolution is to honor your baby in a way that is meaningful to you. This can be different for every single person. All we have to do to remember our baby is something meaningful to us personally. It doesn't have to be this grand thing. It doesn't even have to be a public thing. You can simply light a candle, say their name, put their picture up, talk about them. Do whatever it is that makes you feel like you are honoring them. Remember, it's okay to talk about your baby. If you want to see the full post on the Lost Mom resolutions, you can check it out on Instagram, which is Journey for Jasmine. So today I am talking with Elisa. She is going to talk about her daughter Ava, who she lost at 38 weeks. She was stillborn. She also discusses how important it is to talk about loss because it was something she had never even heard of before going through it herself. Hello, everyone. Today I am here with Elisa. Can you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'd love to. I am Elisa Sharman. I am a teacher. Oh, well, I'm on maternity leave right now, so I guess I'm a teacher mom. Uh, I live in Rochester, New York, and we're having lovely weather. I live with my husband and our 3-month-old son, Miles, and our crazy, wild, lovely dog, Molly.
What kind of
uh,
dog is she?
she's a golden retriever, so
Okay.
high energy. We a little bit off a little more than we could chew with that one, but we love her anyway. Um, so yeah, that's just a little bit about me. Other than being a new mom and sort of navigating this journey and, taking the time off of teaching. We really love to travel and hike and be outdoors. So, yeah.
Where's been your favorite place to travel?
Oh, a couple of years ago, actually, it was right before, the sort of the world turned upside down with COVID. We went to Australia for a family wedding. So that was
Oh, that sounds
the
amazing.
oh, it was the coolest adventure, but oh my goodness, 14 hours on a straight flight from LAX was no joke.
Yeah, that's the part that doesn't sound fun.
I it was less fun leading up to it. When you're actually like on the plane, it was fine. But I still like think about it. Like, I can't believe I did that.
Right. Yeah. So, would you mind sharing a little bit about your loss journey?
Yeah. So in 2021, my husband and I, Ben, and I lost our daughter Ava to stillbirth. She was 38 weeks. I was 38 weeks pregnant. And it just sort of completely blindsided us. We had never even really understood or heard the word stillbirth. We didn't think that it could ever happen to us. I had a very healthy pregnancy. I didn't have any risk factors. I didn't have any genetic abnormalities. We did the whole thing. So I went for a routine checkup. And I had, been feeling kind of achy and a little off. And I had noticed her movement slow down a bit. And, I was just told, the same thing everybody is told, that stereotype. Oh, they're just slowing down. They're running out of room. You're almost at the end. And, something still didn't feel right. And I called the doctor. And sure enough, we heard the words, "I'm so sorry, there's no heartbeat." And we were just like, so completely like just blindsided. We were just like, what do you mean? She's perfectly healthy. I'm perfectly healthy. How could this happen? And so, we went through that whole process. I gave birth to her that day that we had found out. And that journey of grief was just something, one, never expected. And two, you learn so much about, sort of stillbirth and even though we had never heard of it, to find out that it wasn't rare, it was uncommon for sure. Um, uh, but to learn the statistics and to be a part of, this sort of lost community was something that sort of changed our eyes to, this sort of, it is more of a health concern nationally than we really had understood. And Ava was, this beautiful, I mean, she was an angel. She is an angel. And her birth was, as tragic as it was really peaceful and beautiful too. And so, like, through this journey of grief and loss, there's all this like interwoven joy and beauty as well. And so, like, we just realize like how complicated it could be. So, I don't really have like a beautiful, concise story that I can, because I have so many feelings about it. But really, through losing Ava, and then subsequently getting pregnant 6 months later, having Miles, um, we really just found that we really kind of wanted to put a spotlight on, loss and stillbirth and, kind of break the stigma of, pregnancy, infant loss, multiple miscarriages, and through sharing my story and, reaching out to other people for their story, it really sort of made me feel better is not the word because loss is never, there's never something that makes it better, right? You just kind of learn to live with it. um and some days are going to be better than others as far as that goes, but to have this feeling of kinship, I think was really something that grounded us and it brought us closer together and just really allowed us to give Ava a voice, and then support other families, that either went through it previously or maybe are going through it now or are pregnant after loss. That was a whole thing. And as it's there are so many feelings, this feeling of gratitude and excitement, and then that feeling of terror. So
Yes.
it's a whirlwind.
I think how you describe both the loss and the pregnancy after loss is so accurate. It's just complicated and full
Mhm.
of probably every single emotion you could ever imagine, all like wrapped up into one.
Yeah, it's not like a neat little bow. I had always understood grief to be, in a series of stages. I had always imagined it being, sort of a staircase shape, I guess. And
Mhm.
really, what I have found is that it's more accurately described in like waves, or more of a cyclical or a cylinder. It really just kind of like comes back around. And you can experience these intense moments of joy and excitement and gratitude while simultaneously feeling loss, guilt, shame, and fear all in one.
I
And it's
definitely,
messy.
I definitely agree. Yeah.
It's not neat and orderly. It's like they lead you to believe, first you'll feel anger, and then you'll feel sad, and then you'll feel, peace. Like, no.
You're like,
You
yeah,
will
I
not
wish
do
it
those
worked like
things.
that, but no.
Yeah, right, exactly. If somebody could tell me, like, you'd go through grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and then you'd graduate, like, that would, make it, not even make it better, but, you'd be able to sort of budget for that. I'm a teacher, so, like, I like to, be planned and orderly and organized, and, grief does not work like that. Life does not work like that.
Right.
So yeah.
Yes, I found it to be definitely same experience for me. And, like you said, I always thought it was that like straight line of, I mean, not that you like get over it or get through it, but that you, I guess, get to the, I guess what they call acceptance point, which
Yes.
I don't think we ever can after losing a child. I mean, you don't ever, get to that like, oh, I'm just magically okay now phase.
Right. And various stages of acceptance, right? Like, I can accept that that happened to me, but I will never understand and accept that it had to happen to me. So, like,
Right.
you can recognize the loss and accept that it is your reality, but you don't have to accept it being the way that it had to be, or that, that was, one of the things that I thought, people feel it's very comforting to say, like, oh, things are, they're all meant to be. And I remember feeling like, no. Like, I understand that sentiment. I want to feel like the universe has a plan, but no. Why?
You're like, that is not helpful like you think it is.
Yes, and you appreciate the sentiment because you know that people want to help, and if they could take your pain away, they would. But we have so much learning to do, and how to truly, support and accept, and the things to say, and sometimes it's just saying nothing at all.
Right. Yes, exactly. Now, were you ever given a reason for your loss or was it
so
unexplained?
So it did end up being unexplained, or it was sort of given the term of, cord accident, but I find that very hard to sort of accept, because she wasn't born. Ava was not born with her cord wrapped around, and so, like, I have this heart. We don't have like a window to see inside, is what my doctor, and she's so fabulous, and she was my doctor for Miles as well. Um, because I felt that she was very supportive, and was able to explain to me in the best way that she could, sort of after the fact. And that's the problem, right? Is that they're really just conjecturing, unless there is an
Mhm.
actual, like, genetic, you know issue, which they couldn't find. And I couldn't bring myself to have the autopsy, which now, in hindsight, I wish I would have, maybe, been strong enough to have that. Maybe there would have been answers, and maybe there wouldn't have been. But so we were given that it was a cord accident. But again, I felt, kind of betrayed by my body if that was the case. Or, I feel like if she could have moved off of her cord and it wasn't wrapped, you know, then there must have been something else going on. Was there writing on the wall? And in fact, I do. I do believe that there was, maybe something else going on, because we had, my movements at 36, or excuse me, my measurements at 36 weeks suddenly had dropped off. And so we had a late ultrasound scheduled. So, a 37-week ultrasound was the next week. And we were told, she's just going to be small. She's petite, you're petite. And so, she's just going to be small. And I really just feel like that might have been the start of something. And so, that's another thing that has sort of lit my fire, that, I don't blame, my doctors. They were going on the information that they know, and they were going on the information of more than 99% of pregnancies, right? And so, but I do think we can do better and do more to sort of protect babies that, for whatever reason, she wasn't thriving. At that point, had things been different, or had they, maybe induced me right there, would it have made a difference? I don't know. I can't say for sure. And that will always be something that I, feel sad about. But, with my subsequent pregnancy, I was not willing to compromise on my, I guess, my medical journey for his pregnancy.
I think, as lost moms, I think we all go through those what ifs too. Like, what if
Yeah.
I had done this? What if I had done that? What if this had been different? And I think it's really hard to not go down that path of.
Oh, it's a rabbit hole. Absolutely. I mean, again, you go back to that idea of acceptance, right? It's like, I accept it, but I will never stop asking what if.
Right.
So, but again, like I said, with my subsequent pregnancy with Miles, I was not, I was so much more aware of what, the possibilities could be, that I just, I was just a better advocate for myself, I think.
I think that's great that you were able to do that, and that you had a supportive doctor, because sometimes
Yeah.
that's hard to find.
Yeah. And, unfortunately, in the Rochester area alone, there's 300 babies are stillborn every year. And this is just a small city. And so I think that my doctors and a lot of the practices around my area want to do better. And so, it it was just very clear to me that was something that that my doctor really had wanted to prioritize as well.
So have you found it hard parenting after loss, having your baby, and be a parent to both a angel baby and a living baby?
Yes, that's another complicated journey, because just I would imagine that it would be like this if you have two living children as well, is that, you know, your love for them is not replaced, or, like, just because, we had a sibling doesn't mean that we don't love Ava, but because she is not here, it is this feeling of, am I remembering her? Am I honoring her while I am parenting? And so that is those feelings are definitely complicated, wrapped in this joy and gratitude, and just, feeling of, oh my goodness, I can't believe I've brought, finally, I have this healthy, living, beautiful baby. And so there's this like exuberant joy that is also coupled with, well, I should have two, right? There's always that caveat of like, oh, I have this beautiful baby. Oh, but he's my second baby. And
Right.
so there's that beauty again, like the beauty and the ugly all together. And really, I just finding ways to parent Ava in her absence, right? So, again, like honoring her. So actually, my husband and I last November started a project in Ava's memory, just a way that, we could sort of give back to the lost community, support other families of loss in our specific area. And so we created an organization that gifts plush bunnies to families in the Rochester area who experience loss of an infant or a pregnancy. It's called Ava Bunny. And so basically we have taken donations in order to do that. And we were able to support over 300 families. So a year's worth of families in our area uh, who unfortunately experienced what we did.
That's
So
amazing that you've done that in her name. And that, I mean, that's such a help to other families too, something that may seem like such a small thing, but it's really such a big, important thing.
it was one of those things where we did not leave the hospital with her. And so she was born at 10:27 a.m. and I walked out of the hospital at 7 p.m. that day with a box of treasures. And at the time, I was very angry with this box of treasures. I was like, this is just junk, right? But those are the most important pieces of her memory, right? And so but there was one thing that I remember thinking, like, I wanted to hold something. My arms were empty and I was just clutching with white knuckles this box of treasures. And that's where, it sort of, we cannot replace the feeling of not having your baby, but that was the one thing I needed, was something to put in my arms. And so that's where, sort of the plush came from.
I love that. I love the meaning behind that. I mean, I felt the same way, we lost Jasmine at 32 weeks and I felt that same way. Like I needed to hold something.
Yes, you feel restless, this restless energy, because your body has been preparing, your mind has been preparing, literally physically, you are preparing to take this baby home and hold it and be attached to it.
Right.
And when you're not, it's this feeling of anxious energy. What do I do with this? Because now I have to move on.
Right.
And not move on, but I have to move forward. So how do I do that while parenting now a live child and parenting my angel child? And so yeah,
It's a lot.
it's just a lot.
So do you have any advice for somebody who's going through loss?
Yes, I advocate for what you need, because it is hard to put into words. As we're talking now, anybody who's listening who is going through this right now will have those same feelings of, I don't feel like I have a concise message. I don't know what I need. But if you can just advocate for small things, ask your friends and family to buy you dinner, bring you places. If you need to be outside, I remember very clearly my brother-in-law had asked us to go for drinks in an area of Rochester that had like these beautiful little places. And I remember sitting outside just a few days later and having like food and drink outside. And like in that moment, I thought, nothing was ever said about that being a way of care, of self-care, or of showing that you care. But I do remember that very clearly. It was a beautiful day. And he said, why don't we just go out and go for a walk and sit down? And we did that. And I just remember being very thankful. I can remember that very clearly. Find ways to, not replace or try to fill up space, but to sort of lean in to the people around you who want to do things for you. They're not going to say what you want them to say, but they may do what you need if you ask them. And so don't be afraid of those things. Your grief is paramount, and that should be, navigating your grief is a journey for you. And it is hard for your families to watch, because they want to replace your grief. And be patient with yourself and be patient with them because they're going to say some things that are crazy. And so, and don't be afraid if something offends you, just tell them like, that's not helpful. Because I think a lot of times we try to carry other people's grief too. We recognize that they feel for us, that our families and our friends feel for us, and we almost feel badly for them because that's, how, I mean, at least I did. I felt badly that my family had to be a part of it. But they need to be. And so if you let them, you will find that leaning in can be very uncomfortable, but it also is something that, it now looking back, it feels good that I let that happen.
I think sometimes too, it's nice to just do things after our loss that feel normal, like
Yes.
just sitting outside and having a drink and eating a meal, or just
Yes.
doing something that's not just sitting at home thinking about the loss, if that makes sense.
Yes. Well, and I thought too, like people were looking at me as if, and of course with sad eyes, like the empathy that radiated from them was so profound and very kind, right? But then I still wanted to be looked at like a person. Yes, I'm going through this loss, but I am still a person who needs to eat and drink and be
Right.
outside and have fresh air. Like I still, and so the fact that, our family cared enough not only about us to meet our basic needs, but to also just step in and say, let's go and do this. I remember, friends and family too, they'd say like, oh, let's go for a walk. Coworkers, they'd say, I'm going to be in town and let's, meet for a walk. And those things, like if they are offered to you, take them up on it, because even though you would rather just like sit in a dark room and hide, you need those things, and they humanize you. They remind you of what it feels like to be alive, because you have to now go on living for the child that you lost. And how are you going to do that? You're going to want to do that in the best way possible. And that was how I felt like I could give my best to Ava, even though she wasn't with me anymore.
I think that's a great point you bring up. I think a lot of us think, oh, we have to go through it alone, and you don't.
Yeah.
You don't have to hide your grief, or I think what you said about getting out there, letting your family know what you need, accepting their help is
Mhm.
really critical.
Yeah. And it's not easy to do. I remember feeling, sort of almost suffocated in the first few days following loss. Um, because you kind of want to privately scream and cry. You don't want anybody else to see that ugly part of you. But at the same time, um, how else will they know? It's important.
So are there any like particular aspects of loss that you feel need more attention, or that um, you think should be talked about more?
Just that it is so much more common. I think we sort of live in this world of, Instagram and Facebook, where everything looks for somebody else rosy and beautiful and not messy. And so when we see those sort of things, right, we think, well, what's wrong with me? And there's absolutely nothing wrong um, with women and families who have been through loss, because there are so many of us. There are more of us than, I think our current, Facebook driven, airbrushed life wants us to believe. And I think that really just sort of breaking open that egg is really important. And so I think that is something that, I will devote the rest of my life to, is just sharing information, sharing facts about stillbirth or pregnancy loss or infant loss, or infertility. These things are not uncommon. They are not rare. We need to support each other that way by just talking about it.
Yes, I think that's super important. And there's still so many I know that, have said they've never had anybody they could talk to about it, or, even family and friends who are dismissive or,
Mhm.
won't listen. And I hate that so much.
Oh my gosh, yes, and you know what? It was so sad after we lost Ava, a coworker who I had worked with for 5 years. She sent me a card, and this will stick with me forever. She sent me a card, and mind you, I had worked very closely with this woman for years. I felt like she was sort of like a work mom to me, and she's like, "From one mother who has walked in your shoes, I feel for you." I never knew that 30 years ago she lost a daughter to stillbirth as well,
Wow.
because it was, as she described it, it was a different time. She couldn't even bring herself to talk about it. And I was just like, I loved, as tragic as it was to lose Ava, I got to spend a whole beautiful day burned into my memory. I wanted it to be joyful and beautiful. As sad as it was, those memories are with me forever. And she didn't even get to see her baby. They whisked her away, thinking that that would be helpful. And I was just, in that moment, I was like, wow, this is why we need to talk about it. This is
You
why we
know,
need to do more.
that actually reminded me that I had something similar happen that I don't know why I had forgotten about it, but I had somebody who had started working at my job that I was at the time, and she also wrote me a card and said that she had lost a baby as well. And she wasn't one that I had gotten to know very well because she hadn't worked there very long. And then I ended up changing jobs, but just the fact that she, you know, reached out, and
Yeah.
you just never know the people in your life that have gone through it.
No, you're walking and you're talking, and these people that, even whether you know them well or not, it's just not something that is a part of our life. And now I can't even imagine, having a conversation or referring to my family without also having Ava be an extension of that. And so that women have gone through this and have either felt, that they couldn't talk about it or that nobody would understand. It makes me so mad. I can't accept that going forward.
That's kind of
Just
how
like,
I feel too.
absolutely. I mean, your Jasmine lives through you, right? And so, like, my Ava is living through me, and I can do that the best I can by saying her name, by letting her be a part of my family. It's not my job to hold space for other people's discomfort. If they are uncomfortable with me talking about my angel baby, then I think that says more about what they need in their life than what I need in my life. So, again, that is just something that I really think is really important for us lost moms, lost dads as well. I think, we put a lot of, I guess, importance on moms because we expect, the dads to be the stereotypical stoic, they're gonna be the glue for the family. And I feel like, they need a little love too. So
Yeah, I feel
yeah,
like they often get forgotten about.
totally. Because they didn't go through the physicality of it, but the emotional burden is still there. My husband he was by my side, holding my hand, wiping the sweat off of my forehead as I birthed Ava. And so, like, although he didn't physically do what I did, he was there.
Yes.
And that, in some ways, like, I was able to physically be present for her, where he was only, like, I knew her for 9 months. I grew her. She lived in my body. So she lived in my eyes. For our lost dads out there, they didn't get at least that. And so, it's something, that I pay closer attention to when I think about, where their grief comes from. Like their cycle of grief is obviously very different than ours. And sometimes it doesn't mesh, right? Like, and that can be a little, you know, difficult to navigate. But, like I said, you lean in and you explain how you're feeling and advocate if you can.
So, is there anything else that you'd like to add or share?
No, I think that pretty much encompasses it, not in a nutshell, more of in a can of worms. But
Sometimes it's
yeah,
hard to sum it up, so to speak. It's
yeah, because there's really no sum, right? Like a sum is a total. It's a finite amount, and it's not like that. So
well, I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and share your story and share all your wonderful advice for everybody.
um, I I wish that it didn't have to be me, and I wish it didn't have to be anybody listening. But you know what? You're not alone. And I just really appreciate the opportunity to share my Ava with you.
Thank you so much, Elisa, for sharing your story with us. I know Ava would be so extremely proud of all you are doing to help other lost families. One of the things I know so many of us will resonate with is that need to hold something after our loss. We leave the hospital with empty arms. We're just aching to hold our baby. Having that bunny, that stuffed bear, whatever it is that you have to hold on to, can be so comforting during the time after our loss. And then they often become a symbol of our baby in family pictures. I've seen so many beautiful family pictures, both through Project Finding Your Rainbow and through the lost community, people just including their special bear or their animal as part of the family. We include our Jasmine bear in our photos. It's just a way to have them be there with us as part of the family. They're always part of our family. So remember, you just do whatever you need to do to remember and honor your baby and your family and include them in whatever ways you feel comfortable with. Don't worry about what other people say or what other people think. It's all about what's important and meaningful to you. If you ever want to get in touch, you can always email me at Sarah, Sarah, at journeyforjasmine.com, or reach out on Facebook or Instagram at Journey for Jasmine. And then you can check out the blog, which has a lot of helpful articles and all the rainbow skirt stories at journeyforjasmine.com. And then you can also check out the Motherhood Journey keychains on the Etsy shop, which is also Journey for Jasmine. Each one is customized to show your specific journey to motherhood. Thank you so much for tuning in, and remember, we are all in this together.